I never thought I'd live to see the day when my family's farmland passed down since 1948 would be surrounded by water like some kind of medieval castle moat. But that's exactly what happened. And the mansion sitting there isolated and sinking wasn't mine. It belonged to the woman who tried to take everything from me. Her name was Karen Redmond, president of the Maple Hollow HOA, and she thought she could bulldoze her way onto my property, rewrite the rules, and crown herself queen. What she didn't count on was me fighting back with dirt water and patience. It all started before sunrise one morning. I stepped out onto my porch, coffee steaming in my hand, and instead of the quiet fields I'd grown used to, I saw a bulldozer lined up with an excavator and a cement truck on the far side of my land. My land. Orange survey stakes had been hammered into the soil where my family's fence used to stand, and there she was in a red pantsuit and heels pointing like a general. Karen Redmond. I marched down to the site jaw tight and asked the foreman what the hell was going on. He looked past me to her like a soldier waiting for orders. She came strutting over, sunglasses on even though the sky was gray. "Morning," she said sweetly. "We're breaking ground today. Might want to move your livestock." I stared at her. "This is my property." She didn't blink. She just turned her tablet around and showed me a revised HOA boundary map. "Actually, not anymore," she chirped. "The annexation passed 2 months ago. You should have come to the meetings." I laughed once, sharp and bitter. "That's not how land works, ma'am." She only smiled wider, stepped back, and signaled the bulldozer to fire up. Within minutes, they were ripping a trench through what used to be my father's vegetable patch. I called the sheriff desperate, but the deputy shrugged it off as a civil dispute. By the time I got home, there was already a foundation taking shape. Over the next few days, trucks poured in like ants. Rebar concrete floodlights. She wasn't just building a house, she was building a fortress. 3 stories, columns, balconies, a gold letter R on the front gate. And every morning when I sat at my kitchen table, I had to watch that monstrosity rise higher, staring straight at me. I tried to play it by the book, dug through every deed and plat my family had kept in a tin box for generations. They were solid, notarized, undeniable. But the county clerk sighed and told me the HOA had already filed their expansion during a vacation week when the head clerk wasn't around. "It's enforceable now," she said, "unless you challenge it in court. Might take months." Months I didn't have. My land was being swallowed day by day. And then came the breaking point. The sound of a backhoe tearing through the oak tree I'd planted with my son when he was 10. That tree held his childhood, the dog we buried beneath it, the talk we had when he said he didn't want to follow me into the army. Gone in seconds. Mulch. That night I sat on the floor with my grandfather's blueprints of the irrigation system spread around me like battle maps. I felt hollow, weak, like maybe Karen was right. Maybe I couldn't win. Part of me thought about giving up signing whatever papers she shoved my way, letting her choke me out with citations and fines until I packed up and left. But then I remembered who I was. I wasn't just a farmer. I was Army Corps of Engineers. I'd built bridges in Baghdad, redirected floodwaters in Afghanistan. I knew terrain, and I knew my land. That was the night the plan took root. Not vengeance, not violence, strategy. The old irrigation trenches were still there, overgrown but intact. If Karen wanted to redraw boundaries on paper, I'd redraw the land itself. I started digging. At first, just shallow cuts through the soil behind her construction site. The workers ignored them, assumed it was erosion. Then I dug deeper, lining the sides with stone, shaping the slope with a shovel and memory. When Karen stormed over heels, stabbing the ground, and screamed, "What the hell is this?" I just shrugged. Irrigation. It rained the next night, just enough to send water trickling into the trenches. By dawn, her mansion wasn't flooded, but it was surrounded. Her site was turning into an island, and I wasn't close to done. I reactivated the canal gate by the creek, prying it open with a crowbar until rusty hinges gave way. Water surged forward, filling the channels. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I smiled. Of course she didn't sit quiet. She called the sheriff again, accusing me of weaponizing agriculture. He showed up with a clipboard, squinted at my trenches, and then I handed him a certified farm plan from 1953. "Protected irrigation system," I said flatly. The deputy nodded. "That's right." Karen sputtered, mascara smudged, but the law was clear. They couldn't touch me, and she knew it. But she tried to break me in other ways. Citation after citation: weeds too tall, barn paint the wrong shade, animals not compliant with some fake ordinance. I tore them up and kept digging. And while I dug, my lawyer, an old Army buddy named Curtis Monroe, dug through records. He found the silver bullet, a preservation clause from 1964 that legally barred my farm from ever being annexed by an HOA. It was airtight. Karen had built her empire on a lie. I could have waited for the court to crush her, but I didn't. I kept digging, deeper, wider. Night after night by headlamp, while her crew slept, I carved a moat around her mansion. And then came the storm, a real one. Sheets of rain hammered the land water, pouring faster than I'd planned for. By midday, her driveway cracked, her columns tilted, and the foundation started to sag. I watched from the ridge as water swirled around her gates. She appeared on the balcony, drenched, screaming at me to do something. I just stood there, soaked to the bone. "It's not my land," I called back. Remember, by midnight, emergency crews were ferrying her out by boat. Her dream mansion was marooned, half-built, condemned by the very ground she tried to steal. Days later, Curtis called with the news the annexation was declared invalid. The judge cited the Rural Preservation Act, and the HOA was under audit. Karen was finished. She resigned soon after. I didn't cheer. I didn't celebrate. I just walked the perimeter of those trenches with a lantern Cisco at my side, checking the banks, reinforcing the stone. The land was quiet again, heavy but calm, like it had spoken the final word. And that's the thing: I didn't win by shouting louder or fighting dirtier. I won by holding my ground, by listening to the land, by refusing to fold. People like Karen build fast and wide. People like me build deep, and deep always holds longer. Lesson: if you don't draw your line, someone else will draw it for you, and you might wake up to find yourself standing on an island you never chose.